The Great Hall of the High Council was the largest structure in the known galaxy. Its walls stretched so high that clouds formed near the ceiling. Light came from floating crystals that had burned for 10,000 years. Every species that mattered had a seat in this hall. Every species that wanted to survive needed the council's approval. Today, the council was laughing. Ambassador stood alone on the speaking platform. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with black hair tied behind her head and simple dark clothes. Around her sat the representatives of 800 alien civilizations. Most of them were still laughing. "The human petition for membership is entertaining," said High Arbiter. He was and had ruled the Galactic Consortium for 600,000 years. His body was 8 feet of scales and bone plates. His eyes were yellow and cold. When he spoke, the hall fell silent. But we must consider the facts. A hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a human body, rotating slowly, with thousands of data points floating around it. "Humans require a specific mixture of gases to breathe," continued. "Too much oxygen kills them. Too little kills them. They cannot survive in vacuum for more than a few minutes. They cannot regulate their body temperature without external assistance." Kept her face calm. She had practiced this moment for months. "Their bones are made of calcium," another council member added. This was delegate of the were warriors. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that could stop plasma fire. His voice was like grinding stones. "Calcium, the same material found in common rocks. A child could break a human adult in half." More laughter filled the hall. "And there," said a floating sphere of blue light. This was the representative. They had evolved beyond physical bodies millions of years ago. They existed as pure energy, nearly immortal. Humans live for less than 100 years. Some of our youngest members are older than their entire civilization. Waited, she had been told to wait. "They have no natural weapons," said, looking directly at her now. "No claws, no venom, no armor, no psychic abilities, no regeneration. They are, by every measurement we have, the weakest intelligent species ever to request membership." He leaned forward on his throne of black stone. "Tell me, Ambassador, why should the Galactic Consortium accept humanity? What can your species possibly offer?" Took a breath, then she smiled. "You are correct, High Arbiter," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. The hall's acoustics carried it to every corner. "We are everything you say, fragile, short-lived, soft." She stepped forward on the platform. "On my planet there is a creature called a honey badger. It weighs about 12 kilograms. It has no special abilities. It is not fast. It is not strong. It is not armored." The delegates exchanged confused looks. Why was this human talking about animals? "But the honey badger does not know that it is weak," continued. "It attacks lions. It fights snakes whose venom can kill in minutes. It digs into beehives and allows itself to be stung hundreds of times to get what it wants. Other animals have learned to avoid it, not because it is powerful, because it simply does not stop." His eyes narrowed. An amusing story, but stories do not win wars or build empires. "No," agreed. "They do not, but they tell you something about who we are." She looked around the hall at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. "You have studied our bodies. You have counted our years. You have measured our strength. And you have decided that we are weak." She paused. "But you have not studied our history." Another hologram appeared, had prepared this part herself. Images began to flow across the hall. Humans climbing mountains so tall that the air itself became poison. Humans crossing oceans in wooden boats, not knowing if land existed on the other side. Humans walking across frozen wastelands where temperatures dropped far below what their bodies could survive. "We are weak," said, "so we invented tools. We are slow, so we domesticated animals to carry us. We are fragile, so we built shelters and armor and medicine. Every problem we faced, we found a way around." The images continued. Wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters. Each time humans died by the millions. Each time they rebuilt. "We have been to our moon," said. "Not because we could survive there, because we wanted to. We have sent machines to the edges of our solar system. We have split the atom. We have mapped our own genetic code. We have done all of this in less than 10,000 years of civilization." The hall was quiet now. No one was laughing. "They have ruled for 600,000 years," said, looking at. "In that time, you have expanded your territory by 40%. Humanity has only had space travel for 200 years. In that time, we have colonized 9 worlds." She let that number hang in the air. "We do not live long," she continued. "So we do not have time to wait. We do not have time to be patient. We do not have time to accept that something is impossible. When a human is told they cannot do something, they do not accept it. They ask how. They ask why not. They find another way." Shifted on his throne, his expression had changed. He was no longer amused. "You call us weak," said. "Perhaps you are right, but weakness is not the same as helplessness. A creature that has never faced hardship does not know how to struggle. A species that cannot be hurt does not know how to endure pain. We know very well." She straightened her back. "Humanity does not ask for charity. We do not ask for protection. We ask only for the chance to stand beside you, to contribute, to prove that we belong." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then raised his hand. "The council will consider the human petition," he said. His voice was flat, impossible to read. "You will have your answer within 1 cycle." 3 days later, humanity was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Consortium. They were given a small territory in the outer sectors, far from the core worlds, far from anything important. The more powerful species considered it a kindness. Give the fragile humans somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere they could live out their short lives without bothering anyone. They expected nothing from humanity. They had measured everything about the human species except the things that mattered. Ambassador returned to Earth with the news. Celebrations erupted across the planet. Humanity had taken its first step into the galaxy. But did not celebrate. She had seen something in the council chamber that worried her. The representative had flickered strangely during her speech. The scouts had been recalled from the border regions. Ships were being moved. Resources were being stockpiled. Something was coming. The galaxy was preparing for something, and they had not told the new members what it was. Sent a message to Earth's military command. It contained only 4 words: "Prepare for the worst." In the quiet of the outer sectors, humanity began to build. They did not know what was coming. They did not know that their greatest test was only months away. They only knew what they had always known. Survive, adapt, overcome. It was what humans did. The first warning came from the edge of the galaxy. An outpost sent a single transmission before going silent. The message was only 3 words: "They are here." No one knew who they were. Within hours, more outposts went dark, then colonies, then entire star systems. The consortium sent scout ships to investigate. None returned. They sent warships. Those disappeared too. On the 4th day, they finally shared what they knew. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was nothing like the calm meeting where humanity had asked for membership. This time, the Great Hall was filled with fear. Delegates spoke over each other. Some were already planning evacuation routes. High Arbiter demanded silence. When the hall finally quieted, he turned to the sphere. "You knew," he said. His voice was cold with anger. "You knew something was coming." The light pulsed slowly. "We have known for a very long time," it admitted. "We hoped we were wrong. We hoped they would not find us." "Who?" demanded. "Who is doing this?" They projected an image into the center of the hall. It showed a ship unlike anything the delegates had seen before. It was massive, larger than some moons, and its surface was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to move and shift. There were no windows, no visible engines, no markings of any kind. "We call them the Dominion," they said. "They come from the space between galaxies, the void, the darkness that exists where no stars shine." The hall was completely silent now. "They are not biological," they continued. "They are machines, but not like the machines your species build. They are intelligent, they have purpose, and their purpose is simple." The image changed, showing world after world reduced to bare rock. "They harvest," they said. "They consume everything: resources, technology, information. Even organic life is processed for raw materials. They do not negotiate, they do not make treaties, they do not take prisoners, they simply take." Delegate of the stood up. His armored body made the platform shake. "Then we fight," he said. "They have never lost a war. Our fleet is the finest in the consortium. We will destroy these machines." "You do not understand," they replied. "We have seen the Dominion before, 1,000,000 years ago in another galaxy. We watched them consume a civilization far older and more powerful than anything in this consortium. The battle lasted 10,000 years. The defenders had weapons that could crack planets, ships that could move through dimensions, armies beyond counting." The sphere flickered. "They lost." The next 72 hours changed everything. The fleet, the greatest military force in the known galaxy, met the Dominion at the edge of space. 3,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a small planet, formed a defensive line. The battle lasted 4 hours. Watch the recordings from Earth's military command center. He was a commander in the United Earth Defense Force, a new organization that most of the galaxy did not even know existed. Around him, human officers stared at their screens in horror. They had fought with everything they had. Their plasma cannons cut through Dominion ships by the hundreds. Their warriors boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand against mechanical drones. They were brave. They were skilled. They were ruthless. It did not matter. For every Dominion ship destroyed, 10 more emerged from the void. For every drone killed, 100 took its place. The machines did not tire. They did not retreat. They did not make mistakes. They simply kept coming, wave after wave, until the line broke. Of the 3,000 ships that entered the battle, 17 escaped. "Gods," whispered a young officer next to. Her name was, and she had been a pilot for less than a year. "How do you fight something like that?" Did not answer. He was watching the next set of reports. Prime home of the fell in 6 hours. The ancient species that had existed as pure energy for millions of years tried to flee into higher dimensions. The Dominion followed them somehow, caught them, destroyed them. They held longer. Himself commanded the defense, leading his people from the walls of the planetary capital. They fought for 3 days. When the final shield fell, ordered the civilian population evacuated and stayed behind with his personal guard. His last transmission was simple: "Remember us." Then there was silence. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. World after world fell. Species that had existed since before Earth's sun was born were wiped out in days. The Galactic Consortium, which had ruled for 600,000 years, collapsed in less than a month. Refugee ships poured toward the outer sectors, toward the quiet, unimportant region of space where a weak, fragile species had been sent to stay out of the way. Toward Earth. Called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. Presidents and generals and scientists gathered in a bunker deep beneath the surface. They had all seen the reports. They all knew what was coming. "The consortium is gone," told them. His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched tight at his sides. "The Dominion will reach our solar system in approximately 8 months. Based on their pattern, they will not slow down. They will not negotiate. They will come for Earth and they will try to take everything." "What are our options?" the president asked. She was an older woman named with hair and sharp eyes. She had led humanity through its first contact with aliens. Now she would lead them through this. "We can run," said. "Load as many people as possible onto ships and scatter across the galaxy. Some might survive for a while." "And the other option?" Took a breath. "We fight." The room was quiet. Everyone knew what fighting meant. They had seen the recordings. Though with their superior ships and their warrior culture and their unbreakable armor had been destroyed, what chance did humanity have? "The consortium thought we were weak," continued. "Maybe they were right, but running means extinction. Fighting means we have a chance, a small one, but a chance." President looked around the room. She saw fear on every face, but she also saw something else, something that had carried humanity through every crisis in its history. Stubbornness. "We fight," she said. "Send word to every human colony, every ship, every person who can hold a weapon or fly a fighter or build a bomb. We have 8 months to prepare for the end of the world." She stood up. "Let's get to work." The message went out that night. It reached every human in the galaxy. It was short because there was no time for long speeches. "The Dominion is coming. Earth will stand. Will you stand with us?" Within a week, ships began arriving at Earth. Colony vessels, cargo freighters, personal transports, anything that could fly. People came from 9 worlds, leaving behind everything they had built because they needed them. They came knowing they would probably die. They came anyway. The Dominion had destroyed 1,000 civilizations. They had harvested countless worlds. They had never lost. They had also never faced humanity. In 8 months, they would learn what the Galactic Consortium had failed to understand. Weakness was not the same as helplessness. Being fragile did not mean being unable to fight. And sometimes, the smallest creatures were the most dangerous of all. The 8 months passed faster than anyone expected. Humanity worked without rest. Factories that once made cars now produced weapons. Universities became training centers. Children learned to seal airlocks and treat wounds. Old people who had never touched a computer learned to operate defense systems. There was no complaining. There was no debate. Everyone understood what was at stake. Lieutenant sat in the cockpit of her fighter, watching Earth grow smaller in her rear display. She was 23 years old. 6 months ago, she had been a delivery pilot, moving cargo between Mars and the outer stations. Now she wore the uniform of the Earth Defense Force, and she was flying toward a battle that would probably kill her. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it, but the tremor would not stop. Around her, 10,000 human ships formed into battle lines. They were not impressive ships. Most had been built in the last 8 months, rushed into service with paint still drying on their hulls. They did not have the elegant designs of cruisers or the heavy armor of warships. They were simple, practical, human. Commander's voice came through the communication system. He was aboard the flagship, a converted cargo hauler that had been given weapons and a new name, Defiance. "All units, this is command," he said. "The Dominion fleet will enter our solar system in approximately 3 hours. You have all seen the recordings. You know what these machines did to the consortium. You know the odds." Checked her weapons. 2 plasma cannons, a small missile rack, enough ammunition for maybe 15 minutes of fighting, against a fleet that had destroyed 3,000 warships. "I could give you a speech," continued. "I could tell you that we will win, that humanity is special, that destiny is on our side, but you deserve the truth. The truth is, I do not know if we can win. No one does." The communication channel was silent. 10,000 pilots listened. "What I do know is this. We do not have their strength or their technology or their ancient wisdom, but we have something they did not have." Leaned forward. "We have nothing to lose," said. "The consortium had empires to protect. They had history to preserve. They had a reputation to maintain. When the battle turned against them, they had to think about survival, about retreat, about saving what they could. His voice grew harder. We have no empire, we have no reputation, we have only our families, our homes, and our world, and we will not leave them, we will not retreat, we will not save ourselves while Earth burns. Realized her hands had stopped shaking. The Dominion expects us to be weak. They expect us to die quickly and quietly, like all the others. They have calculated our strength and decided we are not a threat. Paused. Show them what they did not calculate. 3 hours later, the Dominion arrived. Had seen the recordings. She thought she was prepared. She was wrong. The Dominion fleet did not fly into the solar system. It appeared. One moment the space beyond Neptune was empty. The next moment it was full of ships, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. They blocked out the stars, an endless wave of geometric shapes and cold metal. "Contacts," said the tactical officer on the Defiance. His voice cracked. "I'm counting. I can't count them all. There are too many." Felt the fear return. It flooded through her body like ice water. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to turn her ship around and fly as fast as possible in the other direction. She gripped her controls. "All units," his voice came through clear and calm, "hold formation. Wait for my signal." The Dominion fleet moved closer. It did not hurry. It did not need to. It had destroyed civilizations far older than humanity. What was one more? Thought about her mother, back on Earth. She thought about her little brother, who was probably watching the battle on a screen somewhere, pretending to be brave. She thought about the small house where she grew up, with the garden in the back where her grandmother used to grow vegetables. She was going to die protecting that garden. Somehow the thought made her smile. All units said, "Engage." The human fleet surged forward. Pushed her throttle to maximum. Her fighter screamed through space, faster than it was designed to go, faster than safety limits allowed. Around her, thousands of other ships did the same. The first Dominion ships opened fire. Beams of energy cut through space and human ships exploded. Saw the names disappear from her tactical display. People she had trained with. People she had eaten dinner with last night. Gone. She did not slow down. Her targeting computer locked onto a Dominion drone. She fired both plasma cannons. The drone exploded. She turned, found another target, fired again. "Stay in formation," someone shouted over the communication system. "Don't let them separate us." Dove under a Dominion beam, close enough to feel the heat through her hull. She came up firing, taking out 2 more drones, then 3, then 4. All around her, humans were fighting with everything they had. Pilots flew through impossible gaps, dodging fire that should have killed them. Engineers on the larger ships worked in burning compartments, keeping weapons online for just a few more seconds. Medical teams dragged wounded soldiers back to their stations so they could keep fighting. It was chaos, it was beautiful, it was human. The Dominion pressed forward. For every ship they lost, they destroyed 5 human vessels. The math was simple and terrible. At this rate, the human fleet would be gone in less than an hour. But the humans did not stop. Fighter took a hit. Warning lights filled her cockpit. Her left engine was gone. Her shields were failing. She had 3 missiles left. She thought about ejecting. Her escape pod could get her back to a friendly ship. She might survive. Instead, she aimed her fighter at the nearest Dominion command ship. "Sorry, Mom," she whispered. Then another voice came through her communication system. "Lieutenant, break off now." She hesitated. "That is an order, Lieutenant. We have incoming." Pulled up just in time to see something impossible. Ships were emerging from behind Jupiter. Not human ships, not Dominion ships. These ships were battered and burned, barely holding together, but they were flying in formation. They were ships. The 17 survivors of the great fleet that had fallen at the first battle. They had fled. They had hidden. And now they were here. "This is commander of the," a grinding voice announced over all channels. "We ran from the Dominion once. We have come to correct that mistake." More ships appeared. Cruisers, the few that had escaped the destruction of their vessels, flickering with damaged energy shields. Ships from a dozen different species, all the survivors who had fled to the outer sectors. They had watched humans fight. They had watched these fragile, weak creatures throw themselves at an unstoppable enemy without hesitation. And they had been ashamed. "You taught us something today," said. "You taught us that there are things worth dying for. Now let us die beside you." The combined fleet smashed into the Dominion formation. Found herself flying next to a warship, its heavy cannons clearing a path through the enemy. A cruiser covered her damaged flank. A sphere pulsed with energy, disrupting Dominion communications. For the first time since the battle began, the Dominion advance slowed. It was not victory, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was something. It was hope. And for humanity, hope had always been enough. The battle continued for days. Neither side retreated. The Dominion could not understand why these creatures kept fighting when the math clearly showed they would lose. The humans and their new allies could not retreat because there was nowhere to go. Earth was behind them. Everything they loved was behind them. So they fought. Sargent had been a farmer before the war. He grew rice on a small plot of land in the mountains, the same land his family had worked for generations. When the call came, he left his fields and joined the defense force. He was 42 years old, too old for combat duty, but no one was being turned away. Now he was aboard a Dominion command ship, leading a boarding party through corridors that smelled like burning metal. There had been 30 soldiers in his team when they breached the hull. Now there were 11. "Keep moving," shouted. His voice was hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. "The engine room is 2 levels down." A Dominion drone appeared around the corner, fired his plasma rifle and watched the machine explode. Another drone took its place, and another, and another. The corridor filled with enemy fire. Dove behind a support beam as energy beams cut through the air where his head had been a moment before. "Grenade," called Private. She was 19 years old, the youngest member of the team. Before the war, she had been a student, studying to be a doctor. Now she threw explosive devices at killer machines. The grenade detonated, clearing the corridor for a precious few seconds. "Move," ordered, "now." They ran. The ship shook around them. Outside, the battle continued. Could hear the deep thunder of weapons fire, feel the vibrations of explosions against the hull. He did not know if they were winning or losing. He did not have time to think about it. His job was the engine room. Destroy the engines and this command ship would drift helpless. One less threat to Earth. They reached a junction. 3 corridors branched off in different directions. Checked his scanner, but the Dominion's interference made it useless. "Split up," he decided. "Take 4 people left. Corporal, take 4 right. I'll go center with the rest." "That's suicide," said. He was not complaining, just stating a fact. "Yes," agreed. "Move fast." They separated, led his group down the center corridor past walls covered in alien symbols and strange machinery. The air grew hotter. They were getting close. A Dominion combat unit appeared ahead. Not the small drones they had been fighting, but a full-sized warrior machine. It was 8 feet tall, with 4 arms ending in different weapons. Its single red eye focused on. Down screamed. He tackled Private to the floor as the machine opened fire. The 2 soldiers behind them were not fast enough. They died instantly. Did not have time to mourn. He rolled, came up shooting, and emptied his rifle into the machine's center mass. The Dominion unit staggered but did not fall. "My turn," said a voice beside him. It was. The young private had pulled out something that looked like a tube of metal. He pressed a button, and the tube extended into a long spear with a glowing tip. "Where did you get that?" asked. Made it myself, said, then he charged. The Dominion machine fired, took a hit to the shoulder but kept running. He drove the spear directly into the machine's eye. The explosion knocked them both off their feet. Once vision cleared, the Dominion unit was a smoking wreck, was beside it, clutching his burned shoulder but alive. I think I need a doctor, said. Helped him up. You can see one after we blow up this ship. Move. They continued forward. The corridor ended at a massive door covered in warning symbols in languages could not read. Behind it, he could hear the deep hum of the ship's engines. This is it, said. He checked his equipment. 2 charges left, enough to do serious damage, maybe enough to disable the ship. He set the charges and activated the timers. 60 seconds. Now we run, he said. They had made it halfway back to the junction when the Dominion found them. Drones poured out of the walls, the ceiling, everywhere. There were too many to count. Fired until his rifle overheated, then drew his sidearm. Fought with his bare hands, grabbing a drone and smashing it against the wall. It was not enough. There were too many. Felt something hit his left arm. Pain exploded through his body. He looked down and saw that his arm was gone below the elbow. He did not scream. There was no time. He sealed the wound with emergency foam from his belt, picked up his sidearm with his right hand, and kept fighting. 30 seconds, he said. We just need 30 seconds. The drones kept coming, went down, overwhelmed, stood over his body and fired again and again until his sidearm was empty. 20 seconds. He pulled a knife from his boot. It was a simple blade, the kind farmers used to cut rice stalks. He had brought it from home. 10 seconds. A drone grabbed him. Another. He felt himself being pulled down. He smiled. The charges detonated. The explosion tore through the ship. The engines died. The lights went dark. In space outside, the great Dominion command ship began to drift, powerless. On the Defiance, Commander saw the ship go dark on his tactical display. What happened? He asked. Boarding team, his tactical officer replied. Sergeant's group, they made it to the engine room. Was silent for a moment. Then he opened a channel to the entire fleet. All units, Dominion command ship disabled. Press the advantage. The Allied fleet surged forward. With the command ship gone, the Dominion drones in that sector lost coordination. They became easier targets. Holes opened in the enemy formation. Humans and aliens poured through those holes, attacking from angles the Dominion had not predicted. All across the battle, similar stories played out. A pilot named, mortally wounded, used his dying breaths to transmit enemy fleet positions. A scientist named figured out how to turn the Dominion's own repair systems against them. An admiral named sacrificed her flagship to save a transport full of refugees. Each sacrifice was small, each death was one person, but together they added up. The Dominion's algorithms could not process what was happening. Their calculations showed that humans should have retreated long ago. The losses were too high. The odds were too bad. No rational species would continue fighting under these conditions. But humans were not rational. They were stubborn. They were angry. They were fighting for their homes and their families and their stupid little gardens where their grandmothers grew vegetables. They were fighting for things that could not be measured. And slowly, impossibly, they were winning. On the 47th day of battle, the Dominion Command Intelligence made a decision that it had never made before in its million-year existence. It ordered a retreat. The remaining Dominion ships pulled back, gathering at the edge of the solar system. They did not leave entirely. They were regrouping, rebuilding, preparing for another assault. But for now, for the first time in history, the Dominion had been stopped. Earth was still burning in places. Half the fleet was gone. Millions of humans had died. But they had survived. In the ruins of the Defiance's bridge, Commander received the reports. He listened to the numbers, the dead, the wounded, the ships destroyed, the colonies lost. Then he sent a message to Earth. We held them, we're still here, we're not done. The war was not over, everyone knew that. The Dominion would return, they always returned. But humanity would be waiting, and next time they would be ready. Because that was what humans did. They fell, they bled, they lost people they loved. And then they got back up and kept fighting. It was not logical, it was not rational, it was not something that could be calculated or predicted. It was human. And it was enough. 1 year after the first battle, the Dominion returned. Humanity was ready. The Second War was longer than the first. It lasted 3 years. The Dominion came in waves, each larger than the last. They adapted their tactics, learned from their mistakes, created new weapons specifically designed to kill humans. It did not matter. Humanity adapted faster. They learned to predict Dominion movements. They built ships that could outmaneuver the machine drones. They developed weapons that targeted the enemy's communication systems, turning coordinated fleets into confused swarms. And they were no longer alone. The remnants of the Galactic Consortium fought beside them. Warriors who had once mocked human weakness now requested human officers for their ships. Scientists worked with human engineers to develop new technologies. Even the surviving shared ancient knowledge that helped turn the tide. When asked why they followed humanity's lead, Commander of the gave a simple answer. They taught us how to be brave again. The final battle took place at the edge of the solar system, near the same coordinates where the war had begun. The Dominion had gathered everything it had left. One final push to break through and reach Earth. General commanded the defense. She was 73 years old now. She had led humanity through the entire war. She had buried her son. She had signed orders that sent thousands to their deaths. She had not slept more than 4 hours a night in 3 years. She stood on the bridge of the new flagship, Unity, and watched the Dominion fleet approach. All units, she said, her voice calm and steady, this is the end. One way or another, this war finishes today. You all know what to do. The battle was brutal. Ships exploded on both sides. Debris filled the space between the fleets. The communication channels were full of screams and orders and final messages. But something was different this time. The Dominion was not fighting to harvest anymore. It was fighting to survive. Humanity and its allies had been pushing them back for months, destroying their production facilities, cutting off their resources. This was not an invasion. It was a last stand. And the machines were losing. Was still flying. She had survived the first battle somehow. Her damaged fighter had limped back to Earth, and she had spent 3 months in recovery. Then she had climbed into another cockpit and gone back to war. Now she led an entire squadron. Her pilots followed her through the chaos of battle, trusting her experience, her instincts. She had become the thing she never expected to be, a hero. She did not feel like a hero. She felt tired. She felt old, even though she was only 27. She felt the weight of everyone she had lost. But she kept flying. Squadron 7, form up on me, she ordered. We're going for the command core. The Dominion Command Corps was the center of their fleet. Destroy it, and the remaining ships would lose all coordination. The war would effectively be over. It was also the most heavily defended position in the entire battle. That's suicide, said one of her pilots, a young man named barely old enough to fly. Almost smiled. Someone had said the same thing to her years ago. Yes, she said, follow me anyway. They dove into the heart of the Dominion formation. Enemy fire came from every direction. Weaved through it, her reflexes sharpened by years of combat, she watched her squadron's numbers decrease. Went down, then others. Names she knew, faces she would never forget. She did not stop. The command corps loomed ahead. It was massive, a sphere of black metal covered in sensor arrays and weapon platforms, the brain of the Dominion fleet. Armed her missiles, she had 4 left, enough to do serious damage if she could get close enough. The Dominion defensive systems locked onto her. Warnings filled her cockpit. She had seconds before they fired. She thought about her mother who had died in the 2nd year of the war. She thought about her brother who was somewhere in the fleet, flying his own ship. She thought about the garden. She pressed the firing button. The missiles streaked toward the command core. The Dominion defenses tried to intercept them, but 3 got through. The explosions tore through the core's outer shell. It was not enough to destroy it, but it was enough to damage the main communication array. All across the battle, Dominion ships stuttered. Their coordination failed. They began firing wildly, hitting each other as often as hitting enemies. "All units," General's voice came through, "push forward now." The Allied fleet surged. Humans and an attack together, taking advantage of the confusion. Ship after ship fell to their combined assault. Watch from her damaged cockpit. Her fighter was dead in space, engines destroyed, life support failing. She had done her part. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she was in a medical bay on the Unity. Her brother was sitting beside her, his face wet with tears. "You're alive," he said. "They found your escape pod." "Did we win?" she asked. Nodded. "The Dominion is retreating. What's left of them? The war is over." Lay back on the bed. She did not feel victorious. She felt empty. She thought about all the people who would never know that humanity had survived. But she was alive. Her brother was alive. Earth was alive. That was enough. 3 months later, a ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from every species in the new Galactic Alliance gathered in a great hall that had been built specifically for this occasion. It was smaller than the council chamber had been, but it was humanity's, and that made it special. High Arbiter stood at the front of the hall. He had survived the war, one of the few leaders to do so. His scales were now, and he walked with a limp from an old wound, but his eyes were sharp. "We have come to honor those who saved us," he said. His voice was different than it had been years ago when he had laughed at humanity's petition for membership. Now it carried respect. "We have come to acknowledge what we failed to see." He turned to face the human delegation. General stood at their head. Beside her were Commander, Lieutenant, and dozens of others who had led humanity through the war. They wore simple uniforms, the same ones they had always worn. No decorations, no medals. "We measured your bodies," said. "We counted your years, we calculated your strength, and we decided that you were weak." He bowed his head. "We were wrong." The hall was silent. "You taught us that strength is not measured in scales or armor. You taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. You taught us that a species that has never faced hardship cannot know how to endure." He looked at. "Tell us," he said. "Tell us how you did it. How did you win when every calculation said you would lose?" Stepped forward. She was old now, her hair completely white, her body tired from years of war, but her voice was strong. "You measured the wrong things," she said. "You counted our years and called us short-lived. But you did not ask what we do with those years. We do not have time to wait, so we act. We do not have time to be careful, so we take risks. We do not have time to accept that something is impossible." She looked around the hall at the hundreds of aliens watching her. "You saw our fragile bodies and called us weak. But you did not ask what we do when those bodies break. We bleed and we bandage ourselves and we keep going. We lose arms and legs and eyes and we build new ones. We die and our children pick up our weapons and continue the fight." Her voice grew stronger. "We are not strong because we cannot be broken. We are strong because we keep going after we break. We are not brave because we do not feel fear. We are brave because we feel terror in every cell of our bodies, and we move forward anyway." She paused. Your people had millions of years. Ours had a few thousand. We never had time to become powerful, so we learned something else instead. We learned to be stubborn. We learned to be too foolish to know when we have lost. We learned to love something so much that we will die for it and then get back up and die for it again. The hall was completely silent. That is how we won, said. Not because we were stronger, because we refused to stop. Years later, after the wounds had healed and the galaxy had rebuilt, a monument was placed at the site of the final battle. It floated in space, a simple stone pillar that could be seen from 1,000 different worlds. The inscription was carved in every language of the galaxy. It was humanity's choice, words they had been saying to themselves for as long as they had existed. We fall, we rise, we continue. The aliens never fully understood it. But they never forgot it either. And when new threats emerged from the darkness between stars, when new enemies came seeking conquest, the galaxy knew who to call. Not the strongest species, not the oldest, not the most advanced. The stubborn ones, the foolish ones, the ones who did not know how to give up. The humans. Because in the end, the Galactic Council had been right about one thing. Humans were weak. And that was exactly what made them strong.